I stood frozen in the doorway of the garage, watching my two children sitting on old lawn chairs, tears streaming down their faces. Their beds were dismantled, leaning against the wall, clothing spilled from hastily packed boxes. The musty smell of motor oil and old gardening equipment surrounded them. "What happened?" I asked, though I already knew. My father appeared behind me. "We needed the bedroom for your sister's daughter. She's staying the weekend. Your kids will be fine out here. We put a space heater in." My mother nodded. "Our other granddaughter needs the premium space. She has allergies." My son's stuffed bear, the one that had helped him through his father's funeral last year, lay face down in a puddle near the garage door. I picked it up, water dripping from its matted fur. I looked at my trembling children, then smiled. "Pack your suitcases." My parents' eyes widened. The broken look in my children's eyes ignited something primal inside me. 10-year-old Emmett's shoulders hunched forward as he tried to hide his tears, while 7-year-old Willow's face crumpled completely, her small hands gripping her favorite book, soaked through from being carelessly tossed aside. "But Mommy," Willow whispered. "Grandma said our room belongs to Cousin Piper now." My mother stepped forward, her silver hair perfectly styled as always. "Nora, don't make this into something it's not. Piper needs a proper bedroom with her allergies. The garage is perfectly fine for a weekend." The space heater hummed in the corner, barely pushing back against the early October chill. A spider crawled across Emmett's makeshift bed, deflated air mattress thrown on the concrete floor. "Like I said," I repeated calmly, picking up Willow's backpack. "Pack your suitcases. All of them." My father, always the imposing figure even at 72, crossed his arms. "Now you're just being childish, Nora. Where exactly do you plan to go?" I met his eyes. "Home." If you're feeling your blood boil right now, I understand completely. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because this story of parental favoritism is about to take a turn that nobody, especially not my parents, saw coming. My name is Nora Callister, and until 14 months ago, I lived a life of careful compromises. I was the practical daughter, the sensible one who became a high school literature teacher while my sister Merritt chased one creative dream after another. I married Theo, a quiet man who taught physics at the same school, and we built a modest life filled with books, garden tomatoes, and weekend hikes with our children. My parents, Griselda and Preston, never tried to hide their preference for Merritt. She was flamboyant, dramatic, and perpetually in need. Every family gathering became a showcase for Merritt's latest crisis or achievement. My accomplishments, Eminem herself, my master's degree, my teaching awards, even my children's milestones, were acknowledged with polite nods before conversations swiftly returned to Merritt's world. "Your sister feels things so deeply," my mother would explain whenever I questioned the imbalance. "You're so self-sufficient, Nora. You've always been that way." Self-sufficient wasn't a compliment, it was their justification for withholding. When Merritt needed money for art school, my college fund was borrowed from to cover her expenses. When she needed a down payment for her condo, my parents liquidated stocks they'd once promised would help with my children's education. "You have Theo," my father would say. "Merritt is on her own." Except she wasn't on her own. She had them. Always. Then Theo collapsed in our garden on a sunny Tuesday afternoon while planting tomatoes with Emmett. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Brain aneurysm, the doctors said. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. My parents attended the funeral, of course. They stayed for 3 days, during which my mother reorganized my kitchen and my father criticized our life insurance policy. Then they returned to their lives, calling occasionally to check if I was still managing. Merritt sent flowers and a heartfelt card, but visited only once, claiming the grief energy in our house was too overwhelming for her emotional state. I sold our small ranch home 4 months after Theo died. The memories there were too painful, and the insurance money combined with Theo's surprising investments gave me options I'd never imagined possible. When I found the Victorian on Maple Creek Drive, un-US, a foreclosure needing extensive renovation, un-US, something clicked inside me. The house reminded me of the stories my father had told about his childhood home, the one his parents had sold after he'd disappointed them somehow. He never explained what he'd done, but the loss of that house haunted him. In his stories, the carved wooden staircase featured prominently, a masterpiece of craftsmanship he'd run his hands over as a child. "Nothing like that exists anymore," he'd say wistfully. "Craftsmanship is dead." I bought the Victorian and hired a restoration specialist, showing him old photographs I'd secretly scanned from my grandparents' albums years ago. The specialist found the original blueprints in the county archives and promised to recreate the staircase exactly. When renovations took longer than expected, my parents insisted we stay with them. "Family helps family," they'd said, and for once, I believed them. Maybe in my time of need, they'd finally see me, really see me and my children. For a while, it seemed they might. My mother taught Willow to make dumplings from scratch. My father helped Emmett build a model rocket. They seemed invested, present in a way they'd never been before. Then Merritt called. Her latest boyfriend had left, she was struggling with her online craft business, and Piper was having trouble at school. Suddenly, my parents' attention shifted. Their conversations revolved around Merritt's problems. The dumplings were left half-made, the rocket unfinished. Still, I didn't expect to find my children in the garage, their belongings haphazardly moved to make room for Cousin Piper's weekend visit. I didn't expect my son's cherished bear, the one Theo had given him, to be face down in a puddle. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. "This is your home," my mother insisted, her voice rising slightly. "We've been so generous letting you stay here during your renovations." The word generous echoed in my mind as I helped Emmett gather his scattered school books. Each one had been carefully covered in protective plastic by my children themselves, something my sister Merritt had never bothered to teach her daughter. "The renovations are finished," I said simply. My father's eyebrows shot up. "That's impossible," the contractor said, "at least another month." Plans change," I replied, zipping Willow's suitcase closed. Sometimes much faster than people realize. As I helped my children gather their belongings from the garage, I could feel my father's impatience growing. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Merritt would never overreact this way. I looked at the deflated air mattress where my son was supposed to sleep, right next to the rusty garden tools and old paint cans. The same son who'd cried himself to sleep for months after losing his father. The same son who'd finally started smiling again these past few weeks. "You're right," I said quietly. "Merritt would never be in this position because you would never put her child in the garage." My mother's face tightened. "Piper has severe allergies. You know this." "Yes, allergies to peanuts and shellfish. Not to sleeping in her own portable travel bed in the living room for 2 nights. I zipped up Emmett's duffel bag, but it doesn't matter now. As we carried our belongings to my car, my mother began to panic. "Where is this house? When will we see the children?" "That depends on you," I answered, helping Willow buckle her seatbelt. My father stood on the driveway, his face reddening. "You can't just disappear with them. We're their grandparents. We have rights." "Yes, you're their grandparents," I agreed, sliding into the driver's seat. "And they're my children. Remember that." As I started the engine, Willow pressed her small hand against the window, tears still streaming down her face, not because she was leaving, but because in the span of an afternoon, she'd learned a harsh truth about conditional love. "Can we still see Grandma and Grandpa?" Emmett asked as we pulled away. I adjusted the rearview mirror, watching my parents become smaller in the distance. "We'll see, honey. We'll see." The drive to our new home took exactly 22 minutes. 22 minutes that stretched into eternity as I tried to explain to my children why we were leaving so suddenly. "But I thought the house wasn't ready," Emmett said, confusion evident in his voice. "Sometimes adults keep secrets," I explained carefully. "Not bad secrets, but surprise secrets. Like when Daddy planned your birthday party last year?" Willow asked, her voice small but curious. The mention of Theo sent a familiar ache through my chest. "Yes, sweetheart, exactly like that." 2. I turned onto Maple Creek Drive, a street lined with Victorian-style homes with sprawling yards and ancient oak trees. At the end of the cul-de-sac stood our new house, a restored 1890s Victorian with a wraparound porch and gables that reminded me of the dollhouse I'd always wanted as a child but never received. Merritt had gotten one, of course. "Is that ours?" Emmett whispered, pressing his face against the window. All ours, I confirmed, pulling into the circular driveway. Every last inch. The children bounded from the car, their earlier tears forgotten as they raced up the porch steps. I followed more slowly, keys in hand, remembering the day Theo and I had first viewed this property, decrepit then, with peeling paint and a sagging roof. We can't possibly afford this, I'd told him. He'd smiled that confident smile I missed every day. Trust me, my investment portfolio is worth more than anyone realizes, and you deserve a home like the one in your dreams. I hadn't believed him then. After his death, when the financial advisor explained exactly what Theo had built, quietly, methodically, over years, I still couldn't believe it. My parents certainly hadn't believed it when I'd mentioned the inheritance. You should cash it out, my father had advised. Take the quick money. You don't understand investments, but I did understand. More than they knew. More than they ever gave me credit for. Over the next week in our new home, my parents called repeatedly. I answered calmly, explaining that we needed space. They sent messages promising to make it up to the children, each text pinged with desperate attempts to regain control. The children need stability, my mother insisted during one call. Yes, I agreed. That's exactly what I'm providing them. My father's voicemails grew increasingly demanding. This is childish, Nora. Your sister says you're punishing us for one small mistake. One small mistake. As if moving my grieving children to a garage was comparable to forgetting to buy milk. On Thursday evening, as I helped Willow hang fairy lights in her new bedroom, AGD, a room with bay windows and built-in bookshelves that made her gasp with delight, my phone rang again. This time, it was Merritt. Mom and Dad are devastated, she said without preamble. They made one mistake. I placed the last thumbtack in the wall, securing the string of lights. Tell them they can visit this weekend. Saturday at 2. Silence stretched across the line. Just like that? After all this drama? Just like that, I confirmed, watching Willow twirl in the glow of her lights. Family is important, isn't it? That's what they always say. After hanging up, I sat on Willow's window seat, pulling her into my lap. Grandma and Grandpa are coming to see our new house on Saturday. She tensed slightly. Will they make us go back? No, sweetie. This is our home now. Forever. Emmett appeared in the doorway, his face serious beyond his years. Are you going to tell them about the papers? I placed a finger to my lips. Not yet. Some surprises need the right moment. Quote, Saturday arrived with perfect fall weather, crisp air, golden sunshine, and leaves painting the lawn in shades of amber and crimson. I spent the morning with the children, baking pumpkin muffins and arranging fresh flowers throughout the house. Why are we making everything so nice? Emmett asked, carefully setting out napkins on the patio table. They were mean to us. I adjusted a pillow on the porch swing. Because how we treat others says more about us than it does about them. At precisely 2 o'clock, my parents' sedan pulled into our driveway. My father stepped out first, his eyes widening as he took in the full scale of the property. My mother emerged more slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. They froze halfway up the walkway, mouths falling open as they stared at the beautiful Victorian home with its wraparound porch, the largest in the neighborhood. This can't be yours, my father stammered. I stepped onto the porch, wearing the confidence I'd always had but they'd never seen. The investment portfolio my husband left, the one you told me to cash out for quick money, tripled in value. My financial advisor helped me leverage it. My mother's hand flew to her throat. But how? When? I've always been capable of more than you believed, I said simply, holding the door open. Would you like to come inside? Inside, my children proudly showed off their rooms. My daughter had converted the sunroom into an art studio. My son had built a small science corner in his bedroom. My father's eyes kept returning to the carved wooden staircase. This looks like… Yes, I said. It's identical to the one in grandmother's house, the house you grew up in. My mother sat heavily on the couch. The house your father's parents sold when he disappointed them. He's talked about that staircase for 40 years. I know. I remember all his stories, I said. I tracked down the original blueprints. The silence that followed hung thick with unspoken accusations. My father ran his trembling hand along the banister, tracing the intricate patterns he'd described so many times throughout my childhood. His face reflected a complicated mixture of awe and something darker, perhaps recognition that I'd accomplished something beyond what he thought possible. "Would you like to see the rest of the house?" I offered, keeping my voice neutral. Willow slipped her small hand into mine, while Emmett stood slightly behind me, watchful and wary. "Of course," my mother replied too brightly, her social mask firmly in place. She'd always been skilled at pretending everything was fine, even when our family was fracturing before her eyes. I led them through the first floor, the formal dining room with its original crystal chandelier, the modernized kitchen with its farmhouse sink and marble countertops, the library lined with built-in shelves that Theo would have loved. With each room, my parents' expressions grew more stunned. "And you did all this on a teacher's salary?" my father asked with thinly veiled disbelief. "On Theo's investments," I corrected gently. He was always thinking ahead. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "You never mentioned he had this kind of money." "You never asked," I replied. "You were always more interested in Merritt's financial struggles." Willow tugged at my sleeve. "Can I show Grandma my reading nook?" I nodded, and she led my mother upstairs, chattering excitedly about the window seat overlooking the garden. For a moment, watching my daughter's animated gestures and my mother's genuine smile, I felt a twinge of hope. Perhaps this could be a turning point. My father lingered in the library, examining the spines of books we'd collected over the years. "You always did love reading," he said quietly. "I remember how you'd hide under the covers with a flashlight. And you'd take the flashlight away," I added, telling me books wouldn't get me anywhere in life. And he flinched slightly. "I was wrong about that. About many things, it seems." The admission, however small, caught me off guard. In 38 years, I'd rarely heard my father acknowledge a mistake. "Dad," I began, unsure of where I was going with this. His phone rang, cutting off whatever moment might have developed between us. He checked the screen. "It's your sister." Of course it was. While he stepped outside to take the call, I joined my mother and Willow upstairs. They were sitting on the window seat, flipping through a picture book. "This house is remarkable, Nora," my mother said, looking up. "We had no idea that I was capable of this." I finished for her. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's not what I meant. What did you mean then?" Before she could answer, Emmett appeared in the doorway. "Mom, Aunt Eleanor is on the phone for you." My mother's head snapped up. "Eleanor? My sister-in-law Eleanor?" I nodded, taking the phone from Emmett. "Hello, Aunt Eleanor. Yes, they're here now." I listened for a moment. "Of course. I'll tell them. We're looking forward to it." When I hung up, my mother was staring at me with unconcealed alarm. "You're in contact with Eleanor?" Eleanor was my father's estranged sister, the family black sheep who'd inherited the lake house my parents had coveted for decades. The rift between them dated back 30 years. To some business disagreement my father refused to discuss. "We reconnected after Theo's funeral," I explained. "She sends the children birthday gifts every year, you know. Even though you told me she wanted nothing to do with our family." The color drained from my mother's face. "What did she want?" "To confirm our plans for Thanksgiving at her lake house," I replied calmly. "She's excited to see the children again." My father reappeared in the doorway, his phone call finished. "Merritt sends her love. Piper's having a difficult day, so they couldn't join us." He noticed the tension immediately. "What's happened?" "Nora was just telling me she's been in contact with your sister," my mother said, her voice strained. The transformation in my father's face was immediate, from cordial to thunderous in seconds. "Eleanor? Since when?" "Since Theo's funeral," I repeated. "She reached out when she saw his obituary. Unlike some family members, she checked on us regularly after he died." "That woman has always been manipulative," my father muttered. "Whatever she's told you." "She told me nothing except how much she regretted losing contact with you," I interrupted. "She showed me old family photos, told me stories about when you were children." My father's mouth tightened into a thin line. "Stories, I'm sure, that painted me in an unflattering light." Actually, no," I replied honestly. She spoke about how protective you were of her when you were young, how you taught her to ride a bike and stood up to neighborhood bullies for her. Something flickered in my father's eyes, a ghost of remembered affection, perhaps, or regret for what had been lost. Whatever it was, he quickly suppressed it. Ancient history, he dismissed. Eleanor made her choices. I thought of the real story Eleanor had shared, how my father had convinced their parents to invest in his business venture instead of helping her pay for medical school. How the business had failed, costing them their retirement savings. How he'd blamed her when she questioned his decisions. But I said nothing of this. Not yet. Let's have those muffins, I suggested instead. The children worked hard baking them. The children worked hard. We gathered on the back patio, where the afternoon sun cast golden light across the gardens. Emmett proudly served the muffins while Willow poured lemonade with careful concentration. You've done well with them, my mother observed, watching my children. They're very self-sufficient. There was that word again. Self-sufficient. As if it were both praise and punishment. They've had to be, I replied. After Theo died, we only had each other. My father cleared his throat. Now, Nora, that's not entirely fair. We offered to help. You offered to manage Theo's life insurance money, I corrected, and suggested I sell our house immediately and move in with you permanently, under your rules, in your space. We were thinking of your security, my mother insisted. Were you? I asked quietly. Or were you thinking of having another person to take care of Merritt when you're gone? My bluntness startled them. We'd never spoken so directly about the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamics. It had always been the elephant in the room, acknowledged only through sighs, tight smiles, and quiet resignations. That's absurd, my mother sputtered. We don't favor… Please, I interrupted. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. I found my children sitting in your garage while Piper got their bedroom. That says everything about your priorities. My father's face hardened. One mistake doesn't erase years of support. What support, exactly? I challenged. When Theo died, you stayed 3 days. 3 days, Dad. Then you went home because, and I quote, life goes on. We thought you wanted space to grieve. My mother said defensively. No. You thought I'd handle it because I always handle everything. Because I'm the strong one. The self-sufficient one. The one who doesn't need anything from anyone. Willow, sensing the rising tension, slipped her hand into mine. Mom, can I show Grandma and Grandpa the treasure room now? My parents exchanged confused glances. Treasure room? My father repeated. I smiled at my daughter. Maybe later, sweetheart. Grandma and Grandpa might not be staying that long. But we brought the special box, Emmett added, his voice rising with excitement. The one with all the… Emmett, I said gently. Remember what we discussed? Some surprises need the right moment. My son nodded solemnly, though disappointment shadowed his face. My mother leaned forward, curiosity piqued. What treasure room? What special box? Nothing important, I deflected. Just a children's game. My father wasn't easily distracted. This is quite a property for someone who was living with us just days ago because she couldn't afford rent. There it was. The insinuation that I'd been deceptive, that I'd somehow taken advantage of their generosity. I never said I couldn't afford rent, I corrected. You insisted we stay with you. You said, and I quote, family helps family, and family doesn't abandon family at the first perceived slight, my father countered. I looked at my children, these resilient, beautiful souls who'd weathered so much loss, and felt a surge of protective fury. Moving your grandchildren to a garage while giving their bedroom to your other grandchild isn't a perceived slight, I said, keeping my voice level for the children's sake. It's a clear message about who matters and who doesn't. My mother's lips trembled. We never meant… I think you did, I interrupted. I think you've been sending that message all my life. The difference is, now I have the power to shield my children from it. After the tour, I served tea on the back patio overlooking gardens my children had helped design. My father's eyes kept returning to the property line, where an impressive stone wall marked the boundary. We were hoping, my father began. Maybe we could stay over sometimes? Help with the children? That won't be necessary, I replied. My neighbors, that lovely couple you just met, are retired teachers. They watch the children after school. My mother's hands trembled. But we're family, I nodded. Family helps family. At least, that's what you always said. My father looked around desperately. We made a mistake. Your sister convinced us. 2000 sumda. It doesn't matter now, I interrupted. By the way, I spoke with Aunt Eleanor last week. Their faces paled. Aunt Eleanor, my father's estranged sister, owned the family lake house they'd coveted for decades. She's leaving it to my children in her will, I said softly. She said she wants it to go to family who understand what that word means. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of neighborhood children playing. My parents exchanged glances loaded with unspoken communication, a marriage skill I'd once admired. Nora, my mother finally said, her voice unnaturally calm. I think we should discuss this as adults. Without the children present, Emmett's shoulders tensed beside me. I want to stay with Mom. Me too, Willow added quickly. My father leaned forward. Children, why don't you go play in your rooms for a few minutes while we talk to your mother? No, I said firmly. Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of them. They've earned that respect. My mother's social mask slipped, revealing raw frustration. This isn't about respect. This is about you turning Eleanor against us, about you poisoning your children against their grandparents because of one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding? I repeated incredulously. You moved them to the garage, Mom. Like unwanted furniture. We made a mistake. My father exploded, then immediately moderated his tone when Willow flinched. We made a mistake, he repeated more quietly. People make mistakes, even parents, even grandparents. For a moment, watching his genuinely contrite expression, I felt my resolve waver. Perhaps there was hope for reconciliation, real reconciliation based on mutual respect rather than conditional affection. Dad, I began. The sound of a car door slamming interrupted me. Footsteps clicked rapidly up the front walkway, followed by the imperious ring of our doorbell. Are you expecting someone? My mother asked. Before I could answer, Emmett jumped up. I'll get it. He raced through the house, returning moments later with Merritt and Piper in tow. My sister looked around with undisguised shock, taking in the expansive garden and elegant patio furniture. Wow, she said flatly. Quite the upgrade from living in Mom and Dad's spare bedroom. Hello, Merritt, I replied evenly. I thought Piper was having a difficult day. My sister waved dismissively. She rallied. Didn't you, sweetie? Piper, 11 years old and perpetually bored, barely looked up from her phone. Whatever. My parents brightened immediately at Merritt's arrival. My mother patted the seat beside her. Come sit, darling. Nora was just telling us about her new house. I can see that, Merritt replied, helping herself to a muffin. Secret renovations, secret wealth, secret relationships with estranged family members. Our Nora's just full of surprises lately. The way she said, our Nora, made my skin crawl, as if I were community property, a shared project that had unexpectedly malfunctioned. No secrets, I corrected. Just boundaries. Merritt rolled her eyes. Always so dramatic. It was just a bedroom, Nora. The kids would have been fine in the garage for 2 days. Willow shrank against me, and I felt her small body trembling. Even now, they couldn't see the harm they'd caused. Piper, I said, turning to my niece. There's a tire swing in the back oak tree. Would you like to try it? For the first time, she looked up with genuine interest. For real? Mom never lets me on those. Too dangerous, Merritt explained quickly. Piper has balance issues. Emmett can show you how to do it safely, I offered. He's quite good at it. My son beamed with pride, finally receiving acknowledgement for something he excelled at. Come on, Piper. I'll show you the trick to getting really high without falling. The children ran off together, leaving the adults in tense silence. Merritt helped herself to another muffin. So, she said between bites, when were you going to tell us about all this? Or were we just supposed to believe you were struggling while you were secretly living like royalty? I wasn't struggling, I replied calmly. I was renovating. With what money? Merritt demanded. You're a teacher, for God's sake. Theo left us well provided for, I said simply. My father cleared his throat. Nora was just telling us about her relationship with Eleanor. Merritt's eyebrows shot up. Crazy Aunt Eleanor? The one who threw a drink in Dad's face at Grandma's funeral? She's not crazy, I corrected. She's actually quite brilliant. Did you know she pioneered a surgical technique that's now standard practice? Or that she's established scholarships for underprivileged medical students? My father shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor always had potential. She just made poor choices. Like what? I asked innocently. Like refusing to invest in your business venture? The one that lost Grandma and Grandpa's retirement savings? The color drained from my father's face. She had no right to tell you about that. She had every right, I countered. It's her story, too. My mother placed her hand on my father's arm. Preston, perhaps we should go. Nora clearly needs more time. Time for what? I asked. To forget how you've treated us? To pretend the garage incident never happened? Merritt sighed dramatically. Oh my God. Are you still hung up on that? It was just a garage, not a dungeon. Besides, the kids need to learn that life isn't always fair. Something inside me snapped. You're right, Merritt. Life isn't fair. If it were, Theo would still be alive. If it were, my children wouldn't have spent their whole lives being treated as second-class grandchildren. If it were, I wouldn't have spent decades watching you receive everything while I received scraps of attention and affection. I stood up, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. But you know what? Life may not be fair, but I can be. And starting today, I'm creating fairness for my children. I walked to the small writing desk in the corner of the patio and removed a leather portfolio. Inside were the papers Emmett had mentioned earlier, the documents I'd been saving for exactly the right moment. What's that? My father asked, wariness creeping into his voice. The future, I replied, opening the portfolio. And the past. But most importantly, the truth. I opened the portfolio and removed a stack of neatly organized documents. 3 months ago, I began. While looking through Theo's papers, I found something unusual. A letter addressed to me in case of his death. Inside was a key to a safe deposit box I never knew existed. My father leaned forward. What are you talking about? Theo was more observant than people realized, I continued, ignoring my father's question. For years, he watched how you treated me compared to Merritt. He saw the pain it caused, even when I tried to hide it. I spread the first document on the table. This is a deed to the lake property adjacent to Aunt Eleanor's. Theo bought it 5 years ago through a trust. My mother gasped. That's impossible. That land wasn't for sale. It wasn't publicly listed, I agreed. But the owner was facing bankruptcy. Theo approached him privately with a generous offer. My father's face reddened. You're lying. That property would cost it nearly $1 million? Yes. Theo was brilliant with investments, remember? The physics teacher you always subtly mocked for his modest career had a talent for spotting undervalued stocks. I placed another document on the table. This is an agreement between Theo and Aunt Eleanor. She's selling her lake house to my children's trust for well below market value. By next month, we'll own both properties. My parents exchanged panicked glances. They'd spent decades coveting that lake house, the symbol of my father's fractured relationship with his sister, the property he believed should have been his inheritance. You can't do this, my father stammered. I already have, I replied calmly. But that's not all. The next document made my mother's hand fly to her throat. What is this? Bank records, I explained. Every time you gave Merritt money for her art studio, her failed jewelry business, her condo down payment, Theo matched it in accounts for our children. He called it the Fairness Fund. Merritt's face twisted with anger. So this is about money? You're flaunting your dead husband's wealth to make us feel bad? No, I said quietly. This is about the truth, and about consequences. I placed the final document on the table. This is a letter from Grandma and Grandpa's attorney, dated 3 weeks before they died. They were planning to change their will to split their estate equally between Dad and Aunt Eleanor. They never got the chance. My father's face went ashen. Where did you get that? Eleanor had a copy. She didn't show me until I asked why there was such bad blood between you. She thought I knew. I turned to my parents, whose expressions had morphed from indignation to genuine fear. For decades, you've used financial support as a weapon, giving generously to Merritt while telling me to be more self-sufficient. You've treated my children as afterthoughts while showering attention on Piper. You've made us feel less than, again and again. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. It is true, and now that the tables have turned, now that I have resources and Eleanor's friendship, you suddenly want to be involved in our lives. I gathered the documents back into the portfolio. Here's what's going to happen. My children and I will be spending holidays with Aunt Eleanor at the lake houses. Both of them. You're welcome to join us, but only if you agree to family counseling. All of us, including Merritt. My sister scoffed. I don't need therapy. Then you don't need to come to the lake, I replied simply. My father's face hardened. You can't dictate terms to us. We're your parents. I'm not dictating. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. From the yard, we heard children's laughter. Emmett, Willow, and even Piper, enjoying the tire swing without adult interference. One more thing, I added, nodding toward the children. Those three deserve better than the family dynamics we've created. They deserve grandparents who love them equally. They deserve to grow up without the burden of favoritism. I closed the portfolio with finality. The choice is yours. You can be part of our lives on these new terms, or you can continue as you have been, but without us. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You'd cut us off completely? I'd protect my children from being hurt again, I corrected, just as any good parent would do. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of decades of unbalanced love hung in the air between us. Finally, my father broke the silence. And if we agree to this counseling? Then we try again, I said softly. With honesty this time. My mother reached for my hand hesitantly. The children would still call us Grandma and Grandpa. They never stopped, I replied, even after the garage. As we sat there in the afternoon sunlight, with the sound of children's laughter floating from the yard, I realized that true revenge wasn't about punishment or humiliation. It was about reclaiming power, establishing boundaries, and creating the family my children deserved, whether my parents chose to be part of it or not. In the months that followed, our family dynamics shifted like tectonic plates, slowly, with occasional tremors, but inexorably toward a new equilibrium. My parents attended counseling, awkwardly at first, then with growing insight. Merritt joined reluctantly, but even she couldn't deny the patterns once they were laid bare by a neutral professional. The first Thanksgiving at the lake house was tense but civil. By Christmas, when snow blanketed the connected properties, something had softened. My father and Eleanor spoke directly for the first time in 30 years. My mother taught all three children, Emmett, Willow, and Piper, to make her famous gingerbread houses, giving each child equal attention and praise. It wasn't perfect. Decades of patterns don't disappear overnight. But watching my children receive the love and acknowledgement they deserved made every difficult conversation worth it. The true measure of success came 6 months later, when Willow fell asleep on my father's lap after he'd spent the afternoon teaching her to fish, something he'd only ever done with Piper before. As I watched them, Emmett sidled up beside me. "Mom," he whispered, "are we going to tell Grandpa that the fish weren't really biting today? I saw you sneaking minnows onto Willow's hook." I smiled and ruffled his hair. "Some secrets are worth keeping, honey. Family healing isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. It's about having the courage to stand up and say, we all deserve better than this." If you're struggling with family favoritism or unequal treatment, remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for everyone's growth. Share your stories in the comments. Has your family ever shown favoritism? How did you handle it? Your experiences might help someone else find their voice. Subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics and the sometimes difficult path to healing.